Today's episode of the Goldcast is sponsored by Beatdowns. Are you an NFL team trying to get your ass whooped by the 49ers? Then you've come to the right place, because that's what we're doing every Sunday. So if you're an NFL team looking to get your ass whooped by the 49ers, we are here. And that's what today's show is sponsored by. Raymond, before we begin, why don't you let them know where can they find us?
You can like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldcast, and you can also follow us on Twitter at @_Goldcast. And be sure to subscribe to us via iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of The Goldcast. That way you get notified whenever we go live with our episodes, which right now is, a couple episodes a week, especially during the football season. We have a reaction cast, and we also have a preview of the following game that same week, and whatever comes up in between that might require an emergency cast, and also our other Bay Area team sports featuring Candlestick Will on those ones. So be sure to like, subscribe, and comment because we like to hear from you.
Heck yeah. And today's going to be a pretty big episode. Not only are we going to do, obviously, our reactions and recap of what happened yesterday in Los Angeles, but after this, I recorded last week an interview with Jonny Dels. And if you don't know who Jonny Dels is, you need to go add him on YouTube right now. Jonny Dels Football Academy. He is a diehard 49ers fan. And what he does is he puts up coaches tape after every game and breaks down all the different plays and what we're doing this week versus last week. And it's like literally, it's like you're in the room hearing a coach break down we're talking from the linemen to the tight ends to the quarterback, fullbacks, running backs. Every position is broken down and what they're doing and how we are succeeding week by week. And so I have an interview with Jonny Dels that we're going to post that's coming onto this feed. So after the end of me and Raymond's reactions, we're going to have that tacked on to the end of this. And it's a great interview, and we had a lot of fun with Jonny Dels, and he will definitely be on in the future. Raymond, you and Jonny Dels have got to sit down and talk. You guys are just a match made in football heaven.
I know. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've already subscribed to his channel, so I'm going to start catching up on all his work.
How dope is his work, though? His videos are dope.
Yeah, it's great. He's definitely an enthusiast. So, and it's not hard. Sorry, that came out wrong. It's not easy breaking down NFL film, whether you watch a lot or not. You have to know the formations. You have to know what they mean. And even then, it's still hard to get it right because the coach knows it better than all of us. I've watched people break down film and still get it wrong, and they're sitting in a booth getting paid by NFL Network. And it's just really hard, especially, and sometimes I think that job is particularly hard because you have to cover all 32 NFL teams, and I cover one team, so it's a lot easier for me to focus on what we're doing than to sit there and try to focus on 32 other teams and 32 other schemes and 32 other, team, identities. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool channel.
It is a pretty cool channel. And so we have a big interview with him that's going to be right after this. So huge episode today. And then later in the week, we also recorded, this is coming up, we recorded our contest. Candlestick Will went onto Twitter and he threw it up. Who is the most successful Bay Area coach? Was it Bill Walsh with 3 rings? Was it Bruce Bochy with 3 rings, or was it Steve Kerr with 3 rings? And Candlestick Will put it to a vote.
Heavy as the crown.
All right, heavy as the crown, exactly. He put it to a vote, and we have the results of that vote on Twitter, and we talk about it. We have a huge episode. We recorded that last week as well. Be on the lookout for that episode. That will drop later in the week. Raymond, before we begin, why don't you let the people know, where can Goldcast Nation find you?
You can find me on Twitter at RaySolis and at Instagram at RaySolis1.
And you can find me on Instagram at RudySolis3 and Twitter at RudySolis3RD. All right, here we go. The 49ers are 5-0. Goldcast Nation, undefeated. We are back. The greatest fanalist in the game is here. Your professor of fanalism is here. Class is in session. Let's go!
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the Gold Cast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the Gold Cast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom! Raymond, the team we were promised is here. They have finally arrived. We have gone through the end of the Harbaugh era, crash and burned, the Jim Tomsula era, the Chip Kelly era, Jimmy G going down with an ACL last year. I mean, 42 injuries in 2 years. Shanahan losing by 5 points or less more than any other coach in the history of the NFL. That wasn't even a stat until Shanahan invented that stat. We have sat through so many incarnations, so many rough years, so much losing. The loss of the Super Bowl. We were at the pinnacle and we lost it for the first time ever. And now, the team we were promised is here. 5-0, Ray. 5-0. We went into LA and dusted them. I don't know if you saw that crowd, Raymond, but I texted all my Rams fans and I said, I really enjoy our second home, the Coliseum, because it was a sea of red. Not a Rams fan to be found anywhere in that crowd. It was literally nothing but 49ers. I don't even understand. It looked like it was 70-30. It looked like a home game. It was bad. It was
like
bad.
There was even a point where the Rams had to go to a silent count because they couldn't hear the play in their radio, the helmet, the radio helmet. How bad is it when you're at home and the crowd is cheering so loudly, and you typically want them to do that as a home team, but it just so happens that the loud, obnoxious cheering is from the opposing team's fan base that outnumbers your fan base 7 to 3. 7 to 3. That's insane. When the camera panned on the crowd several times, I was like, I don't see any blue. I just see a bunch of red. Last time I checked, there is no degree of red in the Rams jersey. So it's not like at Tampa Bay where it's like, where's Waldo? You know, where are the Niner fans in the sea of red? You know, when you play other red teams, I get that, but not the case in LA this past Sunday.
No, and the student had to face the master. Sean McVay finally had to face a Kyle Shanahan team that was locked and loaded. And the response is exactly what we thought. Nothing. He couldn't do anything. The Rams were dismantled. They gave up halfway through the third quarter. That team looked gassed. They looked like they wanted to be anywhere but on the field on Sunday. It was insane. The 49ers it wasn't a perfect game for us. Jimmy Garoppolo, he gave us our weekly, very heartbreaking interception. He's always good for one of those once a week. He's going to give you one really bad pass that's going to break your heart. But had he not done that, we might have won 27-7, maybe even a couple more points on the board. But the
20 or 26-7 could have been a blowout.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense is unstoppable. And I think I have to eat crow. I think we all have to eat crow, all of us, because a lot of people, and don't pretend like you didn't talk crap, Goldcast Nation. Don't pretend like you weren't on the comment section of YouTube bitching like the rest of us about the lack of secondary that we picked up in the offseason. We all have to eat crow. The man I want to give most respect to right now is John Lynch. John Lynch is the man who put this team together, and he is not getting the respect he deserves. And we're going to break down the whole game, but I just want to talk about John Lynch for a second, because this man is the guy who put this team together. And of course, Shanahan had a big part of it. I'm not saying he didn't, but that's John Lynch's job. And I have to say, this team that he has put together for Shanahan, he has put those coaches in the best position to succeed. And Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh are running away with it. And Sherman was a big defender of Robert Saleh as well. He defended him all last year and said that it's not his fault that the team isn't capable of succeeding and executing the schemes he puts together defensively. Well, he was the one he's another guy that had the most questions coming into this season, and he is executing at the highest level. This team is out of control. But I just wanted to give Lynch some props right away first. I wanted to give John Lynch some props because he 100% deserves all the credit in the world because he put this team together, and we were all very critical of him, understandably so, but this is why they get paid the big bucks and we don't. And Robert Saleh, another coach we were very, very frustrated with last year and the year before, and there was even rumors that he might be on the chopping block, and you give him the defense he wants, and he is competing at the highest level as a coach. Shanahan competing at the highest level as a coach. This team is out of control, and I still believe offensively we're still not even where we're going to be in 8 weeks. In 4 or 5 weeks. I'm sorry, we're not there yet. We're still finding our footing, but this team is out of control. They are so good. It's amazing. It is so awesome to see where these guys are, to see what we're doing week in and week out. And I love it. Of course, now everyone's going, well, the Niners are still haven't really been tested yet. We hear this every week. Every week coming into that Sunday, someone says, well, this is the big test for the 49ers here. If they can win today, well, then, maybe they're for real. Then we destroy that team. And then the following Monday, they go, well, the Niners haven't really been tested yet, but this big test is coming up, in a week or so. Like every week we hear this, right? Every team we destroy, it's not a test anymore. That team's no good. When they go win in other games, other places, they're good. But when they lose to the 49ers, they're not good. But anyways, I digress. I've said a lot. I've thrown a million things out. I'm on such a high. I've been on such a high for the last 2 days straight, just so excited about what's happening, and I'm dying to hear your thoughts. I'm going to turn over the mic. Take it away. All you.
Well, I think the first thing is I keep overestimating our opponent's ability to score on our defense. 2 weeks in a row, I've called for 17-point efforts by our opponents, and 2 weeks in a row, they have clearly not reached that goal. And the last week, only got 3 points. This week, only a touchdown. And it was the opening drive, the only impressive drive by the Rams all day long. In fact, it was 7 plays. It took 3 minutes and 36 seconds. They marched 56 yards. They started on their own 44 yards from some good special teams returning. And it was all run plays. The whole script on the opening drive by the Rams was, we're going to run it down your throat. And they did. In fact, they outgained us on rushing yards for the day, 109 yards versus 99 yards. The Rams did a great job establishing the run early and also limiting our run. Now, I did say that we would not amass 275 yards. Typically, that's the NFL because it's the exception, not the rule. You get 275 yards, you come back down to earth typically on the next game. I didn't think we would get under 100 yards, but, credit to the Rams for doing that. But conversely, we came out passing more. And I expected the passing game to be stronger in this game, and that's certainly what it was. Outside of the one ill-advised pick that was supposed to go to George Kittle, according to Kyle Shanahan, but there was some holding calls that prevented him from getting to his spot. And to me, I thought the play was originally going to go to Deebo Samuel. And I thought Deebo Samuel shortened his route. I thought he was supposed to stay in the spot where the ball was thrown versus where he was. He was just outside the hash marks when the ball was thrown. And someone was also in Jimmy's face too. I think if Jimmy had protection and could see the field, I'm not sure if he would have thrown that ball. But then again, he has thrown the ball into tight coverage before. And for some reason, he likes to do that. And for the most part, he's been successful. But listen to this. So after the first touchdown by the Rams, what happens to this team? Punt, turnover on downs, fumble, punt, turnover on downs, turnover on downs, turnover on downs.
Jesus.
That's the line. So from after the 7-play rushing yard, which had me had me taken aback because they were running so effectively, and they were using pre-snap motion and clever alignments to fool our defense to where the running was going. But what happened at the second half? There is no team in the NFL that is better at second half adjustments thus far this season than our San Francisco 49ers. They came out and they stuffed the hell out of this team, and they made Jared Goff pay for it to the point where they were forced to go for it on fourth down 3 times in the second half, and 3 times they failed on those attempts. And man, I don't know who your game ball is going to. I think, God, there's a few game balls that it should go to, and I just don't know. To me, it's like I want to give a game ball to Robert Saleh, and I also want to give a game ball. This might surprise some of you, but I kind of also want to give a game ball to Jimmie Ward, our glass cannon. The glass cannon led the team in tackles for this game. Didn't have any sacks or TFLs or interceptions, but 2 of those 4 turnover on down fourth down conversion attempts were stifled by Jimmie Ward. The ones that were back-to-back possessions. So the one that came in the fourth quarter, that was there was not a whole lot of time left. Jimmie Ward stopped that one. It was Henderson that tried to go up the middle, and Jimmie Ward got the stop for a no gain. Then we got the possession and we fumbled and gave the ball back to them. But then Jared Goff tried to throw to Cooper Kupp. He caught it. Jimmie Ward stuffed him behind the line of scrimmage or behind the first down marker. So there were 2 huge plays, and these were the ones where there were several plays where Robert Saleh got really, really enthusiastic. None of them was he more galvanized than on the goal line stand, which brought back memories of the famous Super Bowl goal line stand, because that's the only other goal line stand that I can recall where it was that close and we had to stop them in 4 straight plays. And we did it, and it was just amazing. So again, the offense has some weak links, right? We have 8 drop balls. Marquise Goodwin dropped a really key ball that would have been a surefire touchdown. Granted, if Jimmy G would have thrown it with just a little bit more pepper underneath it, Marquise Goodwin wouldn't have had to stop and turn around. He could have caught it in stride and could have kept going. But nonetheless, it hit him right in the chest and just went right through his arms. That was a drop ball. The wide receiver core in total has 8 drop balls this year. Jimmy Garoppolo seems to throw 1 silly turnover a game. He has 5 on the season. And I'd like to see those things need to get cleaned up. Right now, the offense, this is a season where the defense has carried the offense because the defense has been extremely healthy. Only 1 injury to the starting lineup thus far through 5 games. The offense has 3 key injuries to the starting lineup, all very pivotal roles. However, Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff just do an amazing job keeping these guys prepared and confident that they can go out there and win, and that the next man up can go and fulfill the role. And they did. The tackles did great. I mean, I knew Aaron Donald would get his numbers. He got a sack in the very first series. That was a 3-and-out for us. One of the few 3-and-outs that we've had all season long. We haven't had many 3-and-outs. I think we had two or 3 this game. Actually, no, I take it back. We had like 4 or 5 because towards the end of the game it started to get pretty tight. And I'm pretty sure that we were exchanging punts back and forth at that point. But Jimmy, for the most part, has been very efficient. His stat line between the 2017 5-0 run is almost identical to the stat line to the 5-0 start this season. Not only are the records the same, but the passing attempts and yardage are almost identical. I think he threw for 400 more yards in 2017, and that's because our offense was very much lopsided back then. We didn't have as strong as a running game as we do now, but he threw 7 touchdowns versus 5 picks. So one thing is for sure, Jimmy seems to be very, very consistent in his efficiency. So I think going forward, what my hope is that he's just going to get better and better. He doesn't have a lot of games under this system, even though he's been studying it for a couple years now. But studying and getting actual repetitions are 2 different things. And right now he's getting those repetitions under his belt. He's 100% healthy. And I think he's been extremely efficient, more efficient than some analysts and pundits and even fans would give him credit for. It doesn't always have to be 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions for it to be efficient or for it to be a good performance. People need to understand that. He was 24 for 33 for 243 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. 1 interception. But just because that stat line says that doesn't mean that Jimmie's good. On third downs alone, the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL for passing third downs in the league, Jimmy Garoppolo, this is for passing, not when we run on third down, but when we pass on third down, Jimmy Garoppolo is the third best passer on third down conversions in the National Football League. You're not poor or bad if you're among the top 3 on third down conversion. Third down is the toughest down next to fourth down if you do decide to even run a play on fourth down. But third down is considered the most pivotal down in any offensive series. So for Jimmy G to be among the top 3 in that category speaks to the volumes of how efficient he is in this passing game. And I know that the rank doesn't say much, but remember, ranking is based on the actual accumulated yardage, and is based on pure yardage. That's all it is. And even though we don't have the yardage to be like a top 10 offense, they are still a very efficient passing game. It's a very West Coast-esque passing game, although it seems like Kyle Shanahan does like to dish it out at least, like I'd say 2 or 3 times a game is what I'm seeing when he likes to throw for a long ball. We did have a long ball attempt this game, but that was dropped by Marquise Goodwin. But then there was the brilliant catch by Dante Pettis over the middle late in the game, late in the third quarter, I believe it was, where Dante Pettis made a leaping grab, and he almost followed it up with another leaping grab in the end zone, almost kind of the catch-esque in the way, the body posture of when he went up to get the grab. Unfortunately, he came down with 1 foot inbounds, 1 foot out of bounds, and it didn't get the score for that. But we have a very efficient quarterback. The only thing that needs to get cleaned up is his turnover ratio, and some of these guys need to catch the ball when it hits them in the chest. Almost all these guys have a drop. Raheem Mostert has a drop. Tevin Coleman has a drop. Deebo Samuel has a couple drops. I don't think George Kittle has any drops. And George Kittle's by far our best receiver on his team. He gets the most targets. He has the most yards. He had over 100 yards in this game. He did actually really good in fantasy this week if you had him in fantasy. But other than that, again, this was a defensive effort. Jared Goff was smothered all day long. Eric Armstead played amazing, had a half a stack. Dee Ford had a sack and a half and a TFL. DeForest Buckner had a TFL. Ronald Blair had a sack and a TFL. Solomon Thomas out of nowhere had that big sack and the TFL. Jaquiski Tart had a TFL. One of the silent contributors to this defense that isn't getting enough attention, and him paired with Jimmie Ward seems to be a very good pair so far, barring any injury from Jimmy. But so far they're playing terrific together. And Nick Bosa, despite having no sacks or TFLs, and I think had 1 assisted tackle, is extremely efficient on
he
just
puts a lot of pressure. Puts a lot of pressure on those quarterbacks.
Yeah, his pressure efficiency
every
is off
every
the
down
charts.
he's coming. Every down.
Yeah, exactly. His pressure efficiency is just off the charts. Robbie Gould, special teams, that's a weak link this year that needs to get shorn up. I know some of it is with the fact that we don't have a good snapper right now, which apparently, is a big deal. You don't know how big of a deal that is until, you start missing field goals.
You see a bad one.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's a big deal for a kicker in terms of how it comes off of the foot. The laces out is a very real thing that does change the trajectory of the football, despite seeming like an insignificant detail to have to cover every single kick. But it does matter. Every kickoff, every punt, every field goal attempt always has the laces out, and that's all on purpose by design. But overall, again, this is a defensive effort. The Rams never were in this game after that very first drive. It was their best drive, and it was they had I don't think after that, I think they had 1 drive of 6 play, another drive of 8 plays, and that was it. Other than that, they got shut out for 3 straight quarters. Jared Goff was 13 for 24 for 78 yards. This is a top elite passing offense. And I know some of that statistical ranking is inflated because they threw for, I don't know, almost like 800 yards the past 2 games, over 100 attempts for Jared Goff, which is unusual for an NFL team to have to do that. I'm pretty sure that that was a record within a 2-game span, not only a Rams record, but also an NFL record for that type of volume of passing. But at the same time, this is still a very elite passing game. This is a different passing game than what we throw. You know, Matt Hasselbeck said that the playbooks for these 2 teams were identical. Very disappointing to hear such a...
I completely disagree. That's ridiculous.
Yes, such a boneheaded take from a guy who plays a position that should know better. Now, are the styles similar? Yes. And maybe he didn't mean little, but these playbooks are far and away vastly different from one another. One is a derivative and an influence from Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay's playbook, but the passing game is very different. Do they do a zone running game in LA? They do, but it's very different from the zone running game that we do on our side. I don't necessarily have the complete knowledge to break the difference down completely, but you know, one of the differences is that the last couple years they used 10 personnel in that zone running scheme. We often use 11 and 12 personnel in our zone running scheme, and we often use 2 to 3 backs in our zone running scheme, whereas outside of this season, Los Angeles has more or less depended on 1 back to fulfill that role, and rightfully so. He's been the best back, the best dual running back in the NFL, and when you have someone that good, yes, you do want to give him the lion's share of the touches. Carolina does the same thing with Christian McCaffrey, and rightfully so. He is the best dual back in the NFL right now, and that's what you need to do with a player like that, because they're just so darn good on both sides. These are players that can potentially get you a Roger Craig-like season, 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Christian McCaffrey is actually on pace for that. So, but again, this is a team that had to play a committee running game just to compete with us, and the second half adjustments shut all of that down. It was just completely shut down. Defensively, this team actually played pretty good. They gave up 20 points, but they only got 2 sacks. They did get 6 TFL, so that was a big deal. They were doing a really good job against our running game, held to 99 yards. There's something to be said about that. So teams will certainly look at that tape, and adjustments, of course, will be made on our end so that we don't let that happen and we go back to what we do best. So, but yes, the playbooks are not the same. It was a horrible take. Absolutely horrible take. Big props to Rex Ryan, who chose us to win the game. Big props to Brandon Marshall on Inside the NFL for picking us to take the game, because everybody else had us losing. And what was the rationale, especially on Inside the NFL? I just don't see the Rams losing at home, and I don't see the Rams losing 3 straight. Well, guess what? That's not an analysis. When I look at the games, I look at the matchups, right? I look at the matchups. I say, what's the matchups? Who has the advantage here? The Niners had the advantage almost on every position except for tackle against Aaron Donald, who had a phenomenal game. He had a terrific game. Aaron Donald got his numbers, but
he did.
That's just one guy. It's like, hey, you're going to match your Aaron Donald against our 4 first-rounders that all can do Aaron Donald-like things coming off of the snap. It's like, good luck. So, that's what I saw. That's my take. I give a game ball to Robert Saleh, and I give 2 game balls, Jimmie Ward and Robert Saleh, for this game.
I love it. I want to go back to Jimmy G really quick on that third down efficiency, right? Because we've seen a pattern emerging with the 49ers, right? They like to run on first and second down, and if they haven't gotten another first down, then what they do is they go to Jimmy G, and he is extremely efficient at getting us past the hash marks and getting us another round of downs. And he's really good at that. Really, really good at that. They haven't asked him to do a whole lot. I love how Kyle Shanahan, I don't want to use the dirty term game manager because it has such a ridiculous connotation that is completely unfair. Managing football games and being efficient at that in the NFL is extremely hard to do. And there are very few quarterbacks that are even capable of being a game manager. And a game manager has become this dirty word when it's really good. People have won Super Bowls managing games.
Yes.
Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl managing a game.
Every single quarterback in the NFL job is to manage the game. Because the offense runs through them. The ball goes through them every single offensive snap, unless you're doing some kind of crazy wildcat thing. But other than that, it goes through the quarterback. So every quarterback has to manage. I don't know when it became this negative thing, and I feel like some of it started. It really started with Alex Smith. He got good with Jim Harbaugh, because they said like Alex Smith, you know, he's really starting to manage the game well, and I'm just like, well, yeah, every quarterback has to manage the game. Well, Deshaun Watson does, Derek Carr does, Carson Wentz does, Matt Ryan does, Kyle Allen does, Phillip Rivers. They all have to do this. Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, Brady, Bridgewater, Breeze, Darnold, Stafford. These guys all have to manage, quote unquote, the game. Jimmy G manages the game very efficiently, which is why he's third in the NFL on passing third downs. He's got 48.7% on that stat. The only two people that are better than him is Derek Carr and Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, who's having a game who's putting up statistics on par with Russell Wilson, believe it or not.
Yeah, and Jimmy G, like I said, going back to this, 100%, I agree with everything you said. He is extremely efficient when we need him to be. You know, he really is. And I love it, because I see a quarterback that is only going to get better. He is far and away much better than Jared Goff. He's in a better system, in my opinion. He's far more versatile. And
he's more efficient than Tom Brady right now. Tom Brady's 15th in the league on third down passing efficiency.
Yeah, Jimmy G, the sky is the limit. I mean, we are seeing basic Jimmy G. We are seeing Jimmy G coming back off of a torn ACL. We are seeing a Jimmy G that isn't being asked to do a whole lot. But when he is called upon, he makes it happen. For the most part, very efficiently. And I love him. I mean, here, listen, you got Patrick Mahomes, you know, the second coming of John Elway over there in Kansas City, and they've lost 2 in a row. You know, I mean, granted, he's hurt. He's definitely very hurt right now. But Jimmy G does.
Really, you think he's compared to John Elway? Is that who you compare?
I
is that just through that?
Yeah, that was literally just. I think it's AFC West. I just pulled like the first quarterback that came into my
head.
Yeah. No,
I was gonna say I think he's like
I think he's like Steph Curry.
Warner in him. Yeah.
Yeah, he just makes the impossible look normal. In a good way. But Jimmy G is so efficient, and that's all we need from him. This team is so efficient. It is really exciting to see what these guys are doing week in and week out. Third down efficiency, I mean, you want to compare us to the Rams. We were 8 of 17. They were 0 of 9. 0 of 4 on fourth down.
Yes,
0
they didn't
of
convert
4.
Any of the crucial downs that you need to convert in a game, they didn't convert it once.
Yards per pass, 1.7 from Jared Goff. 1.7. Because he was doing a lot of these little dink and dunks, because that's all. I mean, that was like the most he could get from the 49er defense was these little dink and dunks, and even they were half the time on the run with a lot of pressure, and it was just desperate attempts to try and get anything done. You know, we suffocated this team. And the offense is very efficient right now. The run game is very efficient. They were saying, I'm sure you probably heard it on the broadcast, that Kyle Shanahan was the first to run back into the locker rooms at halftime, because he could not wait to make his adjustments. And when they came out, I mean, the game was still 7. It was tied 7-7 going into the half. You know, I was fully.
This was a game. This was a game. Yeah,
it was. I
expected it to be close. Yeah,
me too.
Surprised by that.
I was
also thinking, second half adjustments are going to be the difference of this game, and I think they're going to figure them out. They're going to figure this team out.
Yeah. Well, and you know, our LA co-host Louis B, he texted me probably right around the end of the third quarter, and he was like, "Congratulations, you've won this game. You're first in the NFC West. We're done." He goes, "Well, I think we're done today. I think our season's done." I was like, we'll be lucky if we win 9 games. I was like, wow, holy moly. I was like, really?
Now, does Louis B have a flair for the dramatics?
No, not really. I mean, no. I mean, as much as any of us actors.
Because that's a strong feeling that he has there. For him to call so early and just throw in the towel.
He really did. He threw in the towel right at the end of the third quarter. He's like, "This team is done." I was like, "We're only up by like 10 points." I was like, "This is one touchdown, and you're right back in."
Oh, I wish he could have been on the cast. And what happened? Right? They had one play in the third quarter, the handoff that was an unforced error and a turnover and a fumble that Eric Armstead recovered. And what have the 49ers done every time on their first possession in the second half of every game? They've scored. And sure enough, 5 games in a row, 5 possessions in the second half, 5 first possessions in the second half, 5 scores. This team is so efficient coming out of the second half with the adjustments. And when the Rams lost that fumble, it took 4 plays to get down there. And that was when Jimmy Garoppolo did the quarterback sneak up the middle. That was that play. And it was just 4 plays, took 2 minutes of time. This team is just insane with not only their defensive prowess, but their play calling and play designing and ability to just figure a team out, or to continue to keep a team figured out or keep them guessing, and to just be so efficient. I mean, you have to be a good offensive team to score on all of your opening possessions of the second half of all of your games in an NFL season thus far. 5 straight games, to be specific. In this case, that's like, that's New Orleans Saints territory. That's, New England territory.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to lay it down in the NFC. Who is the best team in the NFC right now? Is it the 49ers, the New Orleans Saints, or the Seattle Seahawks? I'm not even going to I put Packers at 4th no matter what, and props to them. But they do not. I see some people saying they're the best team in the NFC. Bullshit. It's one of these 3 teams. Who is the best team in the NFC? And we're gonna end it on this, Ray. Who do you think?
That's a good question. Right now, it seems like, if I were to go statistically and by record, I think it's the Niners. But I'd have to say that, you know what? Actually, I'm going to say it. I think the Niners are the best team, and New Orleans Saints is a very strong second place team, just because of how efficient they've been able to remain despite playing with their backup quarterback. So a lot of resiliency is being shown by them right now, and they've been playing pretty good defense the last couple games. Even though this is their defense is a top 10 defense, but our defense is the number 2 defense, and there's a huge difference between the 11th, 10th. They're 11th in points, 10th in yards, 11th in passing yards, and 14th against the rush. The Niners are the number 2 defense in the NFL. Very, very difficult to do that. And then offensively, our Niners, we are the best rushing team in the NFL. We are like top 3 in scoring, and we are top 3 or top 5, I think, in total yards. And we're like middle of the pack in passing yards, just because our running game is so efficient that we don't have to rely on passing as much as other teams do. So I think, it has to be the Niners. Not only are they unbeaten, but they also have a top 5 offense and defense. And to me, that's what it's going to take. That's what it takes to get to the big show and to get deep into the playoffs. You need a top-ranked team. You need a top-ranked team to do this. And right now, the Niners have the best-ranked team in the NFC. The only other team that's better than them defensively is New England. That's it. Offensively, there's other teams that do a couple of things better. KC has the best deep ball in the entire National Football League. New Orleans has one of the best rounded teams, but yeah, I'm going to go Niners.
So I'm going to say the Saints as number 1 for me, only because I don't know if Jimmy G went down, if we would still be as efficient, and what they've been able to do with Drew Brees out of the lineup is very impressive. And I said at the beginning of the season that I thought the Saints were going to win. We're going to the Super Bowl this year. I didn't realize the 49ers were going to have a lot to say about it, and I'm really happy that we do, and I look forward to playing them in the second half of the season. The good news is we get to play all those teams in the second half of the season, so we're going to see where we line up. I am so excited. We play the Packers, we play the Saints, we play the Seahawks. That's all coming up, so I can't wait. I would say my ranking would go Saints, 49ers, Seahawks, Packers. That would be my top 4. But again, I want to see where we line up. We're going to find out. We're going to find out when we play the Saints in New Orleans. We're going to see. But Raymond, any final thoughts before we go?
Just that, I knew that I had strong hopes. I had a strong feeling that they would win. I just didn't think it would be that efficient. I thought the Rams, being that they were against the ropes, were going to do it, but I think the Rams got more issues to deal with than perhaps I could analyze. I think some of their key injuries and just inability to maintain. It's different. I don't think it'd be like if the Saints had lost Alvin Kamara. How good would that offense be without Alvin Kamara, who catches the ball out of the backfield and in the passing game, but also runs the ball very efficiently, especially now that Mark Ingram's over there in Baltimore. So I think the Saints would be different without Gurley, and clearly the Rams are different. The Saints would be different without Kamara, and clearly the Rams are different without Gurley. Although in the first opening drive, I thought that they had a brilliant game plan and were running very efficiently. It was frustrating to watch because I was like, damn, these guys are doing every single running play in that opening drive was positive. There were no gains, and there were no TFLs. They were gashing us 6, 8, 10 yards at a time. So that was surprising to see. So that, if they, I wonder if they're gonna I think they should use a committee going forward. They should put Malcolm Brown and Henderson in there. If I was a Rams fan, that's what I would be campaigning for. Because I think that's a better recipe for success than what they've done. But yeah, absolutely. So my final thought is, like you said, we've gone through a lot. You said this last week, and I'm basically going to echo it this week. We've gone through a lot, Goldcast Nation. We've gone through many brutal years. Sit back and enjoy this. Enjoy every win. Savor every win, because we all know how quickly this can fall apart. So just savor it and enjoy the ride. Don't get cocky. Stay humble. And week by week, brick by brick, just enjoy the ride, because Shanny is doing what he does, and Salah's doing what he does, and this team is playing at a very high clip. So just enjoy the ride. Everyone have fun. Let's just keep having fun, because we've gone through some really bad, awful years, and I'm glad that we can enjoy some football right now. So enjoy the week. We will be back. We'll have the who is the greatest Bay Area coach. We're going to have that episode dropping in the middle of the week, and then of course our Thursday night preview, which always drops. Usually you guys will find it Friday morning, but we like to do our preview. We'll do our preview of this Washington game Thursday night. It'll be out on Friday. Yeah.
Yep. And
there's a 3-game stretch that looks extremely winnable now.
Yeah.
There's a good chance we remain winless, but I'll save the rest of my opinion. There's undefeated. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a good chance we lose all these games.
All right, Ray. We will see you later in the week. Now coming up is our boy and your favorite 49er fan, your new favorite 49er fan, Jonny Dels, Jonny Dels Football Academy. Here we go. Here's that episode. Can't wait for you guys to hear this. This is great. All right. Here we go. As promised, Goldcast Nation, we have someone that if you haven't heard about him, you will now. And I really want you to go to YouTube and add this guy, Goldcast Nation, 49er Faithful. This is a Rudy Solis III approved member of the crew. This is somebody that I want you to go add immediately. Jonny Dels, and his page is Jonny Dels Football Academy, and we'll spell that out at the end, and I'll make sure that we leave a link in the description. But first of all, Jonny Dels, thank you so much. Welcome to the Goldcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your page first and foremost. I want to tell the people how I found and came across your page. I'm pretty sure while working on and actually editing an episode of the Goldcast, your channel was recommended to me. And I looked at it and I saw it and I realized there were videos on basically like coaches' playbooks on what exactly happened in the games for the 49ers dating back to last season. And I was like, what is this? And so I started watching your videos and they were amazing. You're sitting there, and if you guys haven't seen this, I'm gonna kind of describe this for you, and then I want Jonny here to kind of just talk about how you got into this and why you started this channel. But he's sitting there, and he's breaking down a play. You're breaking down these plays, and you're going. And this year, I mean, you're breaking down play by play versus just I saw in the last year you had like these 20-minute videos where you were kind of going through the whole game. But he'll literally sit there and break down what's going on, what the linemen are about to do, why this play is working, why a play maybe necessarily didn't work the week before, and what they're doing to improve upon it the following week, and just giving us a play-by-play of what Kyle Shanahan and this team is doing offensively, defensively. And so just break down for us, why did you start this page? What gave you the inspiration for it? Because I keep calling it page, this channel, because I absolutely love it, and I think this is a must-watch for any 49ers fan.
Well, for me, it started years ago. I've always been a really analytical person, and I've loved football. I played football in high school. I joined when I was a sophomore, and that was a rough year. It was a year I came in, and I didn't know anything. I mean, they would call a defense. They'd say, we ran a defense, we call it Tiger Cover 3. I didn't know what that meant. I'd go out there. I played middle linebacker, and I wouldn't know where I was going, who I was reading, what I was looking at, anything. And my coaches never trusted me actually going out on the field. I remember I had a conversation with one, and he flat out told me, he goes, I don't feel like I can put you in the game because you don't know what you're doing and you're going to get yourself hurt. And so that whole year was rough. And so I sat there and I tried to learn everything I could. And I took the off season that year and tried to learn everything about the game, our defense that we played. And because for me, I have to understand what's going on to be able to do anything. And so from there, I just set off the next 18 years of my life just trying to learn as much as I could about football and the strategy of it. So back probably in 2010, I think is when I first started getting interested. I was sitting there wishing that the NFL would allow us to view coaches' film, because I kept hearing about this, and you'd see the shows like NFL Playbook, and it felt like it was just a tiny little piece. You wanted so much more because they're trying to give every fan base something, but they're giving you 2-3 minutes in a week to cover something. And I felt like it just wasn't enough. I wanted to know more and get more of that. And I remember there was one game I was so frustrated. It was back when Mike Singletary was still the coach, and we were playing. Alex Smith was having a rough year, and I remember a lot of fans were really, really dogging on the guy. And I sat through a game and I was trying to analyze why everything turned out the way it was. And I sat there watching the broadcast view going, this just cannot tell me anything. So fast forward that to 2013, I ended up, I moved from Washington State to Alabama, of all places. And then my dad got really sick, and he lived in Oregon. So I went and flew back and was taking care of my dad. He was fighting cancer at the time. And I ended up, he was staying at my sister's house, and there wasn't a lot for him to do. And he was on a lot of medication. So he was pretty much sleeping during the day. My sister had to work, her husband had to work, and I had taken a leave of absence from work to go out there and take care of him. So all I had was a laptop in this tiny little building out in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. And the only thing I had was an internet connection. And so I subscribed to the NFL's Game Pass, where you could look at coaches' film. And from there, I got really interested in sharing what I was seeing happening on the field with other people. Because as fans, we want the most of our teams, right? We're constantly digging for information, and you get nothing from coaches and players, right? You get coach speak, you get players speak. They'll say what happened on this play, and very rarely do they say something. Or if it's like Bill Belichick, he says it so quickly and mumbled, nobody understands what's going on. So there, what I did is I was in a fan forum at 49erswebzone.com, And I started a forum thread one day just called Coach's Film Analysis Thread. And I was taking pictures and drawing out what was going on and highlighting different things. I didn't think much of it, and within like 2 weeks, that thread in the forum was the most viewed thread in like 2 years. And so I realized that fans were wanting to see something like this. So actually, for the next 5 years after that, every week after games, I would do a thread. It was a little hard during the Chip Kelly years. I'm not gonna lie. There was actually about a stretch for about a month during the Chip Kelly years where I didn't do any threads. I didn't watch film. Mainly, and the biggest reason why I didn't that year was I honestly got bored of watching the film. One, it's hard to watch losing football. Two, I was bored watching Kelly's offense. That sounds crazy, but what I had done is after he got hired, I went through and watched his 3 years in Philadelphia, and I was actually sitting here with pieces of paper, and I was drawing out every play he was running to keep a catalog of my own playbook, because I was always interested in how many plays are guys running, all this kind of stuff. And what I found after watching 3 years of his film was that he didn't have very many plays. And so I was worried then, and I started talking about it then. I said, I don't think this offense is going to do really well next year. I think there's not enough plays. I think it's going to lead to a lot of turnovers and interceptions because teams are going to start seeing the same thing over and over again, and you can't do that in the NFL. And so that year I just got bored watching it. But then during the Shanahan years, I've kept pretty much on top of it, and because one, it's just been a much more enjoyable experience watching film. There's almost new things every week or every other week, new wrinkles coming in, and it's been really interesting to see the growth and maturity of the offense, specifically, and the defense. Actually, the defense we've seen a lot more this year than we've seen anything else. But fast forward then to this last off season, I really just started the channel as a way to do a quicker breakdown than I was doing for the forum, just in pictures, because it would take so long I'd take screenshots. I would take 8, 9 screenshots. I'd have to categorize them, organize them. I'd be drawing on them, save them, upload them to a file sharing program, then load them onto the forum, and then convert video to GIFs and upload that. And it was so tedious. I thought, if I could just record what I'm doing as I go, this would be a lot easier. And so I did that, and I just put it up on YouTube. I really didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I thought I'd maybe get 100 people following, maybe, but then it was like within the first month, I think I had 900 or 1,000 subscribers, and I thought, what in the world? And that was during the off season. I thought, wow, okay. I was not expecting that. And I started getting traffic from other places. Reddit was a big draw that I was seeing, and then YouTube recommending to other people, and people are commenting on the videos saying, man, you need to put out more of this content. And so when I go back and look at especially my very first videos, I'm almost a little embarrassed because there was just very little effort that I put into it, because I really did not expect it to go anywhere and really to go and reach anything more. But really now what my goal is as the channel is to provide the kind of content that fans who really want to dive into the 49ers and follow them and follow the team and the changes and things that go on at the nitty-gritty level, because so often we're relying upon other people's opinions as far as analysts, like PFF or the NFL Network or ESPN, to sit there and tell us whether or not our players are performing well. For me, I want to be able to see for ourselves, are we performing well? And there's so many things we try and pull from, because like Nick Bosa, for example, if we just look at his stat line at the beginning of the year, it's not going to look that impressive. It's good, right? But it's not like, wow, if you look at his sack numbers compared to a Shaq Barrett or Myles Garrett, it's not there, but his impact on the game has been huge, and it goes so far beyond that. So it's things like that is why I love the opportunity that I have with the channel.
That's awesome. So now let me ask you, you mentioned coming from Washington, how did you become a fan of the 49ers? I'm assuming you're not from the Bay Area. Maybe you are. Maybe your family is. Give me the history. How did you become a fan of the 49ers?
Yeah, so my mom grew up in the Oakland area, and she was a diehard 49ers fan. Like when she was a kid, her and her dad used to go to the old Kezar Stadium.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So I mean, we're talking good old time 49ers.
That's old school 49ers. Yeah, that's great.
So,
That's
so
great.
For me growing up, I grew up in Oregon, and we watched the 49ers games every chance we get. Now, this was in the 80s and 90s, so there wasn't as much Seahawks coverage in Oregon as there was as it grew later. So most of the games we got on a weekend were going to be 49ers games. And so, I mean, I remember I had just turned 10 years old when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl in 1994. I guess it was 95, the 94 season.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a 10-year-old, I had a buddy who was a diehard Cowboys fan, and it was that rivalry in the 90s was heated. And so at 10 years old, I was putting down money with him on that game, on the NFC Championship game that year. So I've been a diehard fan. The earliest game I remember was the '89 Super Bowl. I remember our family watching that. I was 5 years old, and so I remember watching that game. I don't remember much of what happened. I remember it was a blowout, and I was getting kind of bored because it was such a blowout, and I went in the other room or something. But yeah, I was 5 years old. But it's been ever since then. I mean, that's been my team, and we, if you talk to anybody, as you know, being a fan that long, you are a dyed-in-the-wool 49ers fan. If you've gone from the glory of the 80s and the 90s, and you stuck it out through the 2000s, that is a true fan. And
100%.
And so, I mean, I remember the day that Dennis Erickson was hired, and just wanting that was a day of sorrow. So
yeah, there was some rough years in the middle. The 2000s were rough.
And for me, sorry not to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
The worst part about that was, this is going to be so crazy. I had gone to college in Kirkland, Washington, and the university I was going to at the time, the Seahawks were leasing their practice facility from the university. So it was on campus. Like, literally, the northern parking lot was their overflow parking lot. I ran into Holmgren 3 or 4 times in the parking lot. And he's a big guy, by the way.
He looks big.
Yeah, and like Deion Branch was playing for them at the time. I'd be sitting in line at the bank, and he would drive up in his big Cadillac CTS that he had there. And when I lived in the on-campus apartments, they were on the other side of the practice facility. They were practicing almost in my backyard. I mean, it was like I looked out the back patio, and there was a chain link fence, and on the other side of that was their practice field, and we would play our intramural games on their practice field. So you better believe when I would be wearing my jersey on game day that it was a rough day for me. And my first game I ever went to as live game, I went to a friend of mine that I grew up with in high school. He got me tickets for my birthday to go to the 49ers Seahawks game at CenturyLink Field. And that was it was in November of 2004. And what's special about that? No, it wasn't November. It was September. I think it was September 24th. I want to say. I don't have it in front of me, but that was the game that the 49ers broke their scoring streak. They had gone 420 games scoring points, and that game they got shut out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you were there.
I was there. That was my first game.
That's your first game.
The first game I ever go to was the first time in 27 years they hadn't scored a point in a game.
Wow.
And I stuck it out until like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I think. We were up in the third level. I was getting heckled mercilessly the entire game. I think like by the somewhere in the third quarter, we only had like 100 yards of offense. I think it was Ken Dorsey was playing quarterback. It was brutal. It was a rough game. But I did have a few fans that came up to me, as I'm taking the walk of shame. They're like, "Man, you stuck it out. Much respect," kind of a
thing. They applied the mercy rule to you.
They did, yeah, they did.
That is amazing. That is awesome. I love hearing that story. I mentioned to you this off air, but my earliest memory is also the '89 Super Bowl, and my favorite part. My dad has the gold, old school 49ers jacket. He's got it on. He piles us into the car. We drive down through the Mission District. We're in the Mission, and it's a 4-lane street, but there's no center divide. It's just literally 2 yellow lines, and we're so packed. We're not driving very fast. We're moving slow enough that he just is reaching his arm out, and he's high-fiving the drivers going the opposite direction. And I'll never forget just thinking, this is the greatest thing ever to happen. I had no idea that when they won, that the city would turn into a giant party. I had no idea. And that's my earliest 49er memory. And then one of the biggest and most important ones was when the Niners, after the NFC Championship in 2011, in 2012, my father gave me that 49ers gold bomber jacket that he wore that day in '89. He'd kept it all these years, and he said, "I can't really fit this jacket anymore, and I wanted you to have it." And he goes, "Those stains on there, those are Super Bowl stains." He goes, "Those are beer Super Bowl stains." He goes, "You wear that with pride." I still have it. I ended up going and buying those vintage gold ones for my brothers, and we all have them. I got a bigger one for my father now because he obviously is a bigger man than he was when he was young, and we all rock the old school gold jackets on game day when we're in the same area. I'm down now in LA, and where are you now? Where are you living currently?
Man, I'm in Northwest Alabama. That is a long story for a different time,
for a different
probably.
podcast.
But it's so funny you mentioned that gold bomber jacket. So that game I went to, a friend of mine had gotten me one of those vintage. It was actually like a vintage bomber jacket. They found it at a thrift store in the Seattle area, and I mean it still had like one of the original tags in it. It was an old gold bomber jacket. So here I go. Now, okay, when I was in high school, I was such a 49ers fan. My dad got me a personalized jersey. I think it was 2001 when he got me that. And at the time, there was only one size you could get a personalized jersey in, and that was 4XL. For real. Now, I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'8". And I was like 190 pounds. And so I'm wearing a 4XL personalized jersey with my name on the back that's coming down to my knees. The arms come almost down to it's like wearing almost a dress. This thing is huge. And I got the bomber jacket on top of that. And I'm wearing my hat, and I had some face paint on. Like, I was decked out for that Seattle game.
Oh, you were top to bottom.
You were
fanned up.
I was representing. And to sit there in head to toe, I think I was even wearing 49er socks. Like I was all into this would be the game, and it was brutal. And then the next game I went to another game, and it was in Seattle, and I want to say it was the pants dropping game. It was the game where Mike Singletary went in at halftime and dropped his pants.
Oh, you were at that game too?
I was at that game too. So, like, here, the first 2 games I go to were 2 of the most embarrassing losses in Seattle in the history of our franchise. I'm like, dude, have I got to stop going to games or something? But I stuck it through, and the next game I went to was the Christmas Eve game, 2011 under Jim Harbaugh.
When we swept them.
When we swept them, and we finally beat them in Seattle. Finally beat him in Seattle. I was at that game.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And then my wife and I, we got married the next year, and we went to celebrate our 1-year anniversary because we were living in Washington at the time. We flew down to San Francisco to go to a game at Candlestick. And so I was so happy. I was actually able to go to a game. It was the Cardinals game that year, where Vernon Davis caught a couple touchdown passes, and we just blew out the Cardinals that game. I found some great tickets online. We were sitting 7th row at like the 35-yard line. Wow. It was on the visitor side, so it was fun being on that side where I was close enough to. I'm not a big heckler. I'm very much like just kind of chill until something big happens, and I'll scream and everything, but I'm not going to be somebody like heckling the other team. But it was a lot of fun to hear guys heckling Carson Palmer when he was there.
I bet.
Because he's warming up right in front of us there, and people are just mercilessly yelling at him. It was awesome.
That is great. I love that. So let's fast forward now. Let's talk about where we're at. And I'm going to say this. And I've talked about this on the Goldcast. I feel like we're finally getting the team we were promised the day that Kyle Shanahan signed and joined, and him and John Lynch. And I feel like this team is performing with defensive leadership that I didn't even know could exist under a Kyle Shanahan regime. Obviously he's just known for offense, so it's not like that's not an insult. It's just that's what he's known for. And this team defensively has just been incredible, and I think John Lynch has a huge part to do with that. Him and his entire front office and all their incredible scouting. Adam Peters, I think, has been a big part of that, a huge part of that as well. And this team, this run that they're on right now is so incredible. We're recording this on Thursday, October 10th, 7:30, so the Rams game has not happened. By the time you guys, Goldcast Nation, hear this, the Rams game may have happened, and we'll either be really happy or really angry that we still haven't beat the Rams. But as of right now, that game has not occurred. And I don't know about you, I'm just ecstatic. I never expected a start like this. And I have to say, I think Shanahan is not just a little bit. I think he's way better than even Harbaugh. And he started with nothing. Harbaugh was inherited an excellent team, a team that the year that Mike Singletary's final year. I remember watching ESPN analysts on TV saying this team should be number one in the NFC West with all the weapons they have. A couple questions at quarterback, but with all the weapons they have, this team should be number one or fighting for the first seed in the NFC West. And then clearly they were not. And it has been the opposite, and then Harbaugh inherited him, and boom, they went right where they belonged. Kyle Shanahan inherited a team that was just, pick your poison as far as where the problems were. It was just in such a huge deficit, and it has taken us 2 years to really get to this spot. And now that finally, after 2 years that they have created this team, I have to admit, I didn't expect them to be this good. You hope and pray. And to be honest, I was expecting 6 wins. Now, we may just get that, but I really doubt it. This team isn't just kind of good. This team is, if they can continue along this run, is poised to really, really make some noise throughout this NFL season. What are your thoughts on this season? How do you feel about everything that you're seeing?
Man, is right on. This season has been, I guess, somewhat surprising, but also you felt like something like this was coming. I think the theme that we were as fans talking about all offseason was, could we stay healthy? Now, we've had a number of injuries, but what we also saw in the past was if we had injuries, guys couldn't always step up. And especially, at the number one most important position, the quarterback position. But, this team, when we look at the games, I don't feel like there's any team that has even come close to matching us in talent. We've had some self-inflicted wounds as we go on, but when you look at just a talent level, I haven't seen any team that I felt like was as talented as the 49ers. And then when you look at ability to scheme against each other. When you're talking about the chess match between coaches, again, you're seeing on both sides of the ball, and what you were saying, you don't expect that necessarily from a Kyle Shanahan team because he's known for offense, but we've been seeing more diversity and more game plan specific things coming from the defensive side of the ball that we hadn't seen before, and at a level where the defense is outshining the offense, and the offense is not performing badly. I think some fans are talking a little bit about Jimmy Garoppolo and his performance, and his numbers haven't been up there. For me, I don't care. We have one of the top 5 offenses in the league. We're running the ball on everybody, and what we're getting out of our quarterback is exactly what we're asking him to do. They're not asking him to put the ball in the air 40 times a game. They're asking him to convert on the money downs, third downs when they get there, to check them into the right run checks, to get the runs going to the right gaps, identifying the right bubbles where they're going to have the right angles and everything, and he's doing a fabulous job of that. When you look at Jimmy Garoppolo-led offenses versus any other quarterback we've had playing under Kyle Shanahan, the Jimmy G offenses put more yards, more points, more everything, and it's not just in the pass game. It's in the run game as well, and I think he has a big part of that. But this has been just the kind of start that you were hoping we would have, but maybe we didn't believe or weren't sure that we could have. And so it's been really fascinating and just fun to see. And as fans, man, it's great to go through the first month of the season and not have to suffer through a defeat.
Yeah, 100%, man. It has been phenomenal, and this is the kind of start we thought Jimmy G might give us last year. Remember? This is what we thought was going to come, and it didn't quite. He got hurt so early, and it just tore the wind out of the sails. And I know what you mean, coming from someone who is so analytical and understands the game at such a level that I truly respect. We have seen Kyle Shanahan scheme the hell out of these offenses that were just depleted of any talent, that had some guys with heart. I mean, we had some players that were out there. Nick Mullins, I think, is a great example, who played with everything he had. And how many times did we see Kyle Shanahan put offenses with no-name guys out there in position to win, only to find to watch the defense squander and be unable to protect that lead late in the third and fourth quarters. Very rarely did we see a Kyle Shanahan-led offense, even if it wasn't putting up spectacular numbers. If you were watching the day-to-day, in and out, week-to-week progressions of our team, Shanahan always schemed the hell out of those teams, and his ability to do so much with so little was always impressive. And I feel like we all were just kind of going, man, if Jimmy G can get healthy, man, if they can just add a couple more weapons, if they can just really build this defense, this team, if he's able to do that with the Nick Mullins of the world and the Brian Hoyers of the world, could you imagine if Jimmy G's healthy? And now we're getting that, right? Now we're seeing the full potential of, if you give Kyle Shanahan weapons on all sides of the ball. I mean, he's just like a kid in a candy store. And I love what you broke down. I want to talk about that Matt Breida play and how on your channel you have this great video. Go on there. Can you tell people the title of it? I don't want to paraphrase it. Tell them the title of that video.
Title of that video is it's 49ers Playbook: how the 49ers. I believe it's how the 49ers set Matt Breida off for an 83-yard touchdown. It's like one of the top 3 or first 3 videos on my channel right now, or will be. Maybe by the time this podcast is up, it'll probably be still in the top 10, and I'll add it onto a playlist of the Week 5 game review, and also it's been on Reddit too. They can find it there, the 49ers subreddit. It's one of the more higher posts on there.
Yeah, I love that video because in it, you show them running the almost identical play the week before against Pittsburgh. And then you broke down how in the following week, they actually run the same play. It looks like it looks like on tape originally as the lineup, everything's identical, but then instead Breida breaks to the other side, Kittle breaks to the other side, and so does Juszczyk, and that it completely fools Cleveland. They bite on the fake, and it breaks down for the run. Break that down a little bit just for Goldcast Nation, what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard when we can't see it, but basically it's like what you described. The week before we had come out in a run-heavy personnel, and what that does is that puts the defense in the mindset that they're getting ready to strap it on and come at us. So they're getting ready to fight the run, and a lot of one of Harbaugh's weaknesses was that his running scheme. If we'll wind back, you'd mentioned a little bit earlier talking about how Shanahan can do so much more than Harbaugh did. Harbaugh's one of his biggest things in the run game was he was so predictable because he hated running to the weak side. So if we're talking what the strong side and weak side is, the strong side's where you're going to have a tight end or two tight ends or tight end and a fullback. It's going to be where you have more numbers on that side of the center. And when you're facing 8-man boxes, generally the strong side, you're going to have the ability to put a man on a man, or what we call a hat on a hat, and block. And he ran what's called a power man scheme, so it's man to man. When they line up, the offense, that guard is responsible to block one guy, and it's going to be the guy in front of him or the guy, that's his job. He's got one guy to block, and no matter where that guy goes, he will block him, and he's got to block him a specific direction. And so Harbaugh became so predictable that it was going to be a strong side power run. Almost, first down, that's what you could almost guarantee. It was like 90% of the time. When they got in the red zone, they were going to pull Mike Upati, and they were going to run behind Alex Boone, and they pulled Mike Upati so many times back then that it just became that defenses could watch Mike Upati. I would see linebackers on the film. Their head would be staring straight at Mike Upati, and where he would go, they would go. So he would take them to the play every time. And so running lanes kept getting congested. And then on top of that, we couldn't take advantage of the play action pass game to get them to slow down. So that was one of the big hindrances in our offense then. This year, if you look at Kyle Shanahan, he's not afraid to, and he has the ability to run weak side, to run strong side, to run outside, to run inside. He can attack any lane in the defense. Any lane that the defense will present, he will attack. And so it's not about we're going to do what we're going to do. It's we're going to do what you're going to let us do. And so that play in particular was one we were playing against the Steelers, and you run these zone plays, and the zone plays aren't you're going to block the man in front of you. You go to a spot and you block the first man that's going to be inside or outside of you, depending on what kind of a run it is. And so that's why you see these linemen running one direction or the other, and some of them are getting up into the second level now. Sometimes you'll have a lot of times the center will be responsible if it's going to be a strong side run. His job is to go and get to the second level and block the first person that appears inside of him, or coming from the back side of the play. That could be a safety, it could be a linebacker. But in a power scheme, that center, it's you go get that linebacker no matter where the linebacker runs, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So this way, they're setting these defenses up for constant horizontal movement, which meaning they're moving left and right. They're not able to come up and down the field. And so as you do that, you can run weak side, you can run weak side, you can run weak side, and you do these in these zones that teams now, they start moving that direction. They're no longer looking at guards. They're no longer reading their keys. They're seeing movement, and they're attacking movement. And so on that play, Cleveland then, they see from the week before, we attacked the weak side because we ran a lot of weak side runs against the Steelers. And so we come out and we're going to make it look like we attack the weak side and then come back to the strong side. And now if you think about that, on the strong side, now you're able to bring 6 blockers onto that side of the ball and wall everybody off and open up a huge lane. And Matt Breida is the kind of talent that there's a reason why Kyle Shanahan has gone after guys with speed, because he knows he can get somebody separation, they're gone. And so he just looks at it. It sounds weird. I think he looks at people almost like chess pieces, that if I can get this chess piece in the right position, they're going to be gone because they're so fast. And so you mitigate some of the needs for guys that, can always juke somebody out, which Breida can do that, right? We've seen that. It's not putting down his talent at all. But if you can get guys with certain measurables sometimes or vision, then you're not looking for guys that can do everything. You're not looking for like an Ezekiel Elliott. You don't need an Ezekiel Elliott to have a successful running offense, as we've seen in Kyle Shanahan's system. You need guys that can that have a smaller skill set but are very good at that skill set. And so you can take role players and make them star players, because if you can get them if you get the right role players in the right positions, he can manipulate defenses to really hit some home runs.
I love that. And so what you guys got right there was a sneak audio peek of Jonny Dels Football Academy. I love that breakdown. Really, really enjoy that. So I've got time for one more question here. I've really enjoyed you being on the show. Thank you so much. I want to ask you, this is most likely going to air after our Rams game, our game here in Los Angeles against the Rams, where I am. But give me your pre-prediction. So people will hear this after that game, but tell us, what do you think happened in that game?
I think it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a battle in the run game. One thing, I'll make a bold prediction about just some things that people might, if it comes out beforehand, they can look for. If not, they can afterwards they can say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I do expect, if we come out in base personnel, anything with 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, 2 running backs, which again with use checkouts, probably going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets. You'll see either, I think, Dwelly or Kittle playing use checks role in the backfield. If we do that, watch for them to probably get lined up over on Brunskill's side, on the right side. And the reason for that is I just finished watching the Rams film against the Seahawks in the right before I hopped on here. What I noticed was when the Seahawks came out in base personnel, the Rams would put Aaron Donald on the weak side at the 3 technique, which means outside shade of the guard. Last year when we played the Rams, I thought our offensive lineman who performed best against Aaron Donald was Laken Tomlinson. He handled him pretty well throughout probably about 3/4 of the game. Whenever Donald was over Person, it was ugly. Person just doesn't have the brute strength to stand up against Aaron Donald. So I see us putting a tight end a lot on the right side, and if we're going to be running to that side. If we put a tight end on the left side, expect counters going to that side. So, because one thing I saw with Donald is he can penetrate in. If you're trying to do runs to go around him, traps around him, it gets rough. We may even see the appearance of the old wham block from the Harbaugh days. The wham block was where we would take Delaney Walker and some of these interior defensive linemen, defensive tackles that would penetrate so far. We would let them do that and come across the formation with Delaney Walker, and he would block them, push them out of the hole, and we'd run up up behind him. Seattle tried to do that, but their offensive linemen their guards are really slow. It was not as slow as the Rams linemen though. They were very slow of foot. So that'll be interesting to watch. I think our defensive line is going to dominate the Rams' offensive line. Their interior guys are struggling. They and that's really set the Rams' offense back. They've been struggling with their outside zones because their guards are getting beat to the spot. They're not fast enough. And one thing our linemen excel at is quickness and speed. So especially the interior guys. But anywho, look for tight ends being on the right side over by Brunskill and running to that side away from Aaron Donald. Or if we do, I expect him to get double teamed. But I mean, which I know that's not like a hot take or anything. Everybody tries to double team Aaron Donald, but as far as just one thing to look at formation-wise, when you see that, you can understand that's Kyle Shanahan trying to get a matchup that he wants. He wants Laken Tomlinson on Aaron Donald. We'll see if I'm right. I kind of I mean, obviously, I believe I will be, but we'll see.
So let me ask you, do the 49ers stay undefeated after this Sunday?
I mean, as a fan, I got to say yes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I may have a YouTube channel and I may call myself an analyst, but I'm a fan first, right? So I'm gonna believe we're gonna be undefeated until we get defeated, and even then, I'm gonna believe it was still within possibility.
Absolutely, I love it. Awesome. His channel is called Jonny Dels. Now you got to spell it very specifically. It's JONNYDELS. Jonny Dels Football Academy. I have a link in the description, both on our YouTube page and on our in the synopsis for our podcast, for our audio podcast. Go check him out. Add him. Watch these videos. They're absolutely fantastic, and they're getting. I think they've evolved a lot, especially this year, bud. And they are really fantastic. These little snippet ones you're doing play by play, I just gobble them up. And so just keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate you coming on to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, thanks, bud. Well, you definitely got to come back on later on the season. We've got definitely some more games to talk about.
Definitely, yep.
All right, bud. Talk to you later. All right, thank you guys for that huge episode. Thank you, Jonny Dels, for coming on to the show. Thank you so much for listening to the Goldcast. We're in a great run. This is an awesome time to be a 49ers fan. We will see you later in the week. Candlestick will be back, and we are going to talk about who you said is the greatest coach in Bay Area history. So concludes another edition of the Goldcast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Swiss III. We'll see you next time. Same Goldcast time, same Goldcast channel.
This is the Goldcast.